Have you ever wondered if plants are speaking to one another via some method that we just can't detect? That's what the topic of today's video is about, because I found this incredible news article, which led me to the actual research paper, titled Stressed Plants Make Ultrasonic Clicking Noises. And what we're going to do today is just dive into what this paper has found. As always, links are down in the description. If you like what you see, do all the things that YouTubers tell you to do, and like, comment, subscribe. But this paper, it was published in Cell just in March of 2023, and its sounds emitted by plants under stress are airborne and informative. So, essentially, this was a relatively straightforward study, but it has really fascinating conclusions. The question was, do plants emit noise of any type? We know that plants do react to noise. There's been some studies published on that. And we do know that plants do have some form of communication between one another. Generally, it's thought that the communication was via root systems or through chemical cues, but there is this body of work showing that there might also be a sound-based system of communication, very possibly. This paper really just detected the sounds, but it didn't really do the communication aspect, but let's just go into it. So, based on just the summary, airborne sounds emitted by stressed plants have never been investigated. Here we show that stressed plants emit airborne sounds that can be recorded from a distance and classified. So this is more than just they make a sound, so what? And what's interesting is it might actually be detectable by other organisms. We cannot detect it, and we'll talk about why in just a second, but other organisms might be able to actually hear these plants. So the introduction just talks about the kind of body of literature on sound in plants, as well as, really just sound in plants. But what they did was they put plants inside of an acoustic box. We can see that right here. They did several different trials. They had tobacco plants and tomato plants, which are both economically viable. They're used in agriculture quite a bit, so it makes sense to use these plants, and they're often grown around the world. And they placed two microphones that were listening for the plants. And these microphones detected sounds beyond the human range of hearing. They were ultrasonic sound detection. And they did do several different control trials, which we'll talk about in just a second. What they found, though, is that plants do emit sounds. And stressed plants. They stressed plants by either putting them through a drought stress, just not watering them enough, or by actually cutting them, making a little snip. And they found that those plants that were stressed significantly emitted more sounds than plants of the control groups. So what this is saying is that if you dry out a plant, if you go through drought, or you cut them, they are undergoing some stress, they actually emit more sound, which is fascinating. Now, the paper goes pretty in depth about what the sounds look like, what the spectrographs look like, all that fun stuff. And they did a lot. So a lot of these results are really just talking about the methodology, the statistics. I'm not going to dive in deep. I really just want you to get the fundamental concepts of this paper. And then beyond the acoustic box, because of course you're not typically growing plants inside of an acoustic box, they also looked at it within the context of a greenhouse. Now, greenhouses are inherently noisy. There's many background noises that are happening within a greenhouse. That could be just stuff going on outside, like if it's near a road, or it could also be all the sound-producing materials inside of that greenhouse. If you have a sprinkler system, if you have a digital timer that makes those little clicking noises as it increments, essentially there's just a lot more noise. So the question was, can they actually even detect these sounds inside of a greenhouse? And so what they found within the greenhouse, they also did do another control trial. We're just going to hop down to this really quick. The discussion, I think, is the best place to focus on for this. Absolutely read this paper. It's linked down below. I believe it's open access as well, so you should be able to find it no matter what. And what they found is that plants emit detectable and informative airborne sounds under stress. Informative based on that control system where they had some stressed plants, some non-stressed plants, and the stressed plants emitted more noise. So that's what they mean by informative. It's the plants telling something that it is loud, or that they're stressed. Now, they were in the ultrasonic range of 20 to 100 kilohertz. This is outside the range of human hearing, and they could be detected from a distance of 3 to 5 meters, which is pretty far apart. This isn't like if you put the microphone right onto the plant, do you hear something? This is detectable at a distance. And many mammals and insects could theoretically detect these plants. This is within their range of hearing. And because it's detectable at a distance, 3 to 5 meters, it's going to stand to reason that maybe some of these animals can hear this. But the best part was they used a lot of machine learning models to see if they could actually detect which plants were stressed versus not stressed. So essentially run a model, run an algorithm, run a machine learning model that would say, hey, can you tell me if this plant is stressed or unstressed, right? They were able to detect the dry and cut plants with 70% accuracy. Okay. And they were able to distinguish between drought-stressed and control plants in a greenhouse, in that greenhouse with all the extra noises, based only on the sounds the plants emitted, with an accuracy of 84%. This is really mind-blowing. Like, that is crazy high accuracy. Of course, they're dealing with a limited sample size. They're just dealing with 2 plant species in a very sterile environment. If you did this in a true greenhouse, like your standard greenhouse, the results would probably be a little bit less accurate, but it could be a really useful tool. They also went another step further, and they looked at the sounds emitted by plants at high and low levels of dehydration. So dehydrated plants, at some level, they need water. Some of them are severely dehydrated. They need a lot. They have high dehydration. Or they have low levels of dehydration. To make it more understandable, it's like they're a little bit thirsty. They're a little bit parched. But they were able to actually classify those plants with an accuracy of 81%. So this is really, really cool. Like this is not, hey, they do make sound and that's it. They're actually able to say, we can detect if a plant needs water with an accuracy above 70%. I mean, that's better than me. Like, I look at the plant, I look at the soil, and I'm like, does it need water? I don't know. I'm terrible with plants. I kill them all. So this is incredible. Now, the actual sound that is being made is it's a clicking noise, and this article has this news article has it linked down here. So I'm going to turn up the audio, and I'm going to mute my mic so you can actually hear this clicking sounds. Now, these clicking sounds, I should note, this is not what you would hear. The authors condensed the sounds and put them into the range of human hearing, just like pitch shifting it is what I'm assuming. But you can hear it. It's like that. It's clicking noises, right? So that's what these species that they say might be able to actually hear it are hearing. That's what these machine learning models are actually hearing. And the thought is that it's through cavitation. Cavitation is essentially, if we want to just break it down really simply, it's essentially just popping bubbles. Cavitation happens all the time. It's actually used in some industrial applications. I've even seen it used as a potential treatment for removing tumors, basically putting bubbles inside of the tumor cells and breaking the bubbles, and it breaks up the cells. So cavitation is a super cool concept, and it's just really interesting seeing that these plants also emit it. So here's an example. I believe B was supposed to be an example of what cavitation is. Let me just double check. Yeah, so this is just showing some of the potential bubbles inside of the plant, this little bee figure right here. But if we just keep going through this discussion section, they actually found that the frequencies of the sound emitted by the plant species correspond with trachea diameter and wider tracheas in the plants emitting lower sounds. So what they're saying is that the width of the plant, the diameter, for example, of the stems, would actually change how the sound is emitted. and with bigger plants making lower frequency noises. This is also this is an interesting parallel because the same finding is found in frogs, which the larger the frog, generally the lower the call. That's why you have like these tiny little chirping frogs that make a meep, meep, meep noise, and then you have like the big bullfrogs that make a womp, womp noise. So it's totally understandable. But there are also different sounds emitted under drying and cutting. And the thought might be that the drying and cutting actually change the gas dynamics of the plant. So if you cut the plant, you're kind of releasing the gas, so it would have a different sound. And if you're drying out the plant, that might cause the stem to actually get smaller, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, it's just saying that this can actually change the pressure of the plant and, yeah, create different noises. So that's how these machine learning models and maybe organisms are able to actually distinguish between the plants. Now, this is where it gets really, really cool, because the authors say that they could absolutely use this for agricultural purposes. The thought would be, say you're in a greenhouse setting, let's say it's one of these hyper green farms, with the crazy vertical plants. They could have a machine learning model that is listening to the plants and detecting that, hey, some of these need water. That's kind of the thought. And by doing that, they say that, more precise irrigation can save up to 50% of water expenditure and increase the economic yield. So basically saying that instead of just shooting water out all over the crops, instead we can actually take a more targeted approach and reduce the water consumption dramatically. Of course, doing precise irrigation has other costs that come into it, but if the goal is to reduce water consumption as much as possible, this might actually be useful. But what's interesting is the authors are posing that maybe other organisms can hear these plants. They say here, for instance, many moths, some of them using tomato and tobacco as hosts for their larvae, can hear and react to ultrasound in the frequencies and intensities that we recorded. So they're saying that many moth species, for example, might actually be able to hear, hey, are these plants dehydrated? Are these plants not dehydrated? Are these plants damaged? Have they been cut? Maybe they're not. They're not necessarily saying that they could be able to distinguish it. It's also not known if the moths actually respond to this noise. But it's saying that there is a potential study to see if moths are able to hear these noises and respond, particularly with this body of research since they use tomato and tobacco plants, and moths are known to use them for their hosts. But this is also another thing that they say might be possible. Plants have already been shown to react to sounds. That is known in the literature. And specifically, they can increase their drought tolerance in response to sounds. Let me repeat that. Plants are already shown to react to sounds and will, in some cases, increase their drought tolerance in response to those sounds. The thought here is that perhaps if you're in a field of, tomato plants or whatever, and you are also a plant in this scenario, and you start to hear this clicking noise of a stressed plant saying that, hey, I don't have enough water, I'm dying or whatever, you might start to become more drought tolerant. You might start doing different biological things to increase your drought tolerance. I believe some of the plants will actually close up the pores on the leaves to release less water out into the atmosphere. Others might actually do something with the roots, if I remember correctly. Plants are not my forte, and I want to make that known. But I just thought this was incredibly fascinating. Of course, there's some limitations with this study. There's a limited number of species, limited number of conditions. There's not as much information that they can do within the context of this study, but this is incredible first steps. Like I can absolutely see a huge boom of plant-based sound studies coming out over the next 5 years or so based off of this research. So this is a pretty short little video. I just wanted to talk to you about some really cool plants. Short, it's 15 minutes. Okay, whatever. But hey, if you liked what you see, make sure to subscribe, do all the things that YouTubers tell you to do, and have a good day.